And we're live. Hey guys. So the topic that I want to talk about today, before I should maybe focus my camera, is recovery breathing, and especially the various forms of recovery breathing. Because the question that I get quite often is, what is the difference between hook breathing and recovery breathing, the way that we are teaching it? Well, for example, in Molchanovs, we call it recovery breathing, but we explicitly don't call it hook breathing. We make a difference there. So and that's the difference that I would like to talk about today. So the term recovery breathing is probably quite a general one. This is all the techniques that are being taught after surfacing from a breath hold dive to recover as quickly as possible, which basically means to normalize the levels of oxygen in the body as quickly as possible, and as a second priority, to get rid of the excess of carbon dioxide that has been built up during the breath hold dive. So that's what all these forms of recovery breathing have in common. Now, there are, I would say, three different forms of recovery breathing. They look very similar, but there is a distinct difference. Okay, let's start with the hook breath. The hook breath is something that has been taught for a very long time. And the theory behind it is you take a breath in, mainly with your chest muscles, or basically intercostal muscles. So you inhale, and as you have this air in your lungs, you close your glottis again and apply pressure. And then you release. So the idea is you fill your lungs, close the glottis, apply pressure, which then allows the diffusion of oxygen back to the bloodstream, or should facilitate that diffusion when you apply this pressure. So it looks like this. Okay, so that's hook breathing. Then there's a second form of recovery breathing where there's no hook, and it's simply inhaling and passive exhale. That's, for example, what is being taught in AIDA. What I wrote also explained in the AIDA manuals why to do this. And it looks the following way without this hook, without the break. It's so this is same inhalation, so active inhalation with the intercostal muscle, then passive exhalation, so no pressure, no restrictions, just let the air flow out. The third version, what we teach in Molchanovs, is somewhere in between. It is not a hook in the sense that there is a pause before exhaling. It's inhaling and the exhaling starts right away, but the exhaling happens against resistance, and the resistance is probably easiest to do with the lips by creating this bit of resistance. Some do it with the tongue, but I prefer the lips. So it looks like this. All right, so there's no pause, but there is a resistance on the exhale. The question is now, why this evolution? Why from the hook breath, which is sort of the oldest technique, to the exhalation or the recovery breath as we're teaching it now in Molchanovs? It is true that this pressure that the hook applies helps the diffusion of oxygen from the freshly inhaled air into the blood. But it also has a downside. The downside is when you do a big breath and then apply pressure, what happens is actually the lungs expand and you apply mechanical pressure to the blood flow to the brain. So the carotides here get actually compressed to a certain amount and this reduces the blood flow towards the brain. In a critical situation where you are low on oxygen after a long dive, this reduction of blood flow to the brain can be too much, and this can lead to a blackout. On the other hand, the form of recovery breathing without any restriction is apparently what let's say that the thin layer of science that we have in that sense says can lead to not a really good and quick retention of oxygen, or let's say it's less fast than with a hook breath. So when you simply inhale and exhale without this resistance, that pressure that helps to diffuse oxygen is missing. So maybe the truth is somewhere in between, and that's what we're teaching right now. So we do not make a pause, but we apply a bit of pressure. So right after the inhalation, we start exhaling with resistance, which then creates hyperpressure, so a bit of an elevated pressure in the lungs. But it doesn't create this spike of pressure which can lead to a reduced blood flow to the brain. So the idea is basically to get the best of both worlds without the flip side of it. So for now, that's what we teach. Recovery breathing. It's always called recovery breathing without a hook. And for instructor trainers and instructors in Molchanovs, it's really important that you know these subtle differences. And for many of you, this also means that you probably have to change the way you demonstrate and teach recovery breathing. And when you see students that use another technique, that doesn't mean they're doing something wrong. That just means they've been taught a different technique. So you can make them aware about that. And with that, I conclude this topic. Let me know what other interesting questions you have. See you next time. Bye-bye.